And we're live.
Yep, and we're actually picking up after another one that dropped early. It's probably going to show zeros, but it ought to have recorded that. But yeah, in case anyone didn't get that, we're coming from another stream. My sister, CatdragonLady, and I'm Jägermeister Dreamer from my vlog channel. So, sis, since you're the owner of this stream, you want to start with a narration of something?
Yes, we are narrating a horror story. My brother didn't get a chance to finish from the last one that he started, so we're going to try and finish that. Welcome to episode 1 of our horror narration, as we should say it. This is going to be a horror narration.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to be looking up some horror stories, and she will, on Creepypasta, and she'll decide whether or not she wants to narrate the ones that I bring up, and we're going to take turns.
Yeah.
So, um, first one is The Crawl Space. Now, this one I know who wrote it. Madame Macabre. If you haven't seen Madame Macabre on YouTube here, where have you been? She has done amazing narrations.
Yes, she has.
We can't pretend to match her skills because not only does she have more than just a Chromebook or an Asus laptop, but she has got the perfect voice for most of these narrations that a lot of people will hear, like from Creepy McPasta or Being Scared. She's got a really good voice for horror story narrations.
Yeah.
So this one is The Crawl Space.
All right.
So that's a yes on that one.
Yep.
It'll start up here. It may glitch up because of advertisements, but...
Hi there. I guess you could say I'm writing this as a cautionary tale to those who plan on studying abroad in future. I don't mean to discourage you from going in the first place. It's more like I just want you to be aware of this so that something like this doesn't happen to you too. I guess I should explain a little bit. Last summer, I was selected to participate in the study abroad program. That would be centered in Rome for several months. Like anyone would be, I was
elated.
I had never been out of the States before. So this was going to be the real adventure for me. In the weeks that followed, I happily packed everything I could fit into my suitcase. I will be the first to admit that I had way overpacked for this trip. I was nervous about leaving my parents for the first time, but I was so excited for the newfound freedom. I would have while in Europe. Before I knew it, my parents were dropping me off at the airport, and I was boarding a 19-hour flight to Rome. Despite being long and tedious, the flight wasn't all that bad. When I exited the airport, I was greeted by the program supervisor and several other students who would be studying with me. They were about the same age and all looked just as excited as me. From there, we went to our mandatory orientation meeting, and afterwards we went to pick up our apartment keys. In the months that proceeded with the trip, we were responsible for getting to now our our or would-be roommates, as well as finding a place to stay that we could all afford. There were 3 girls I would be staying with. They were nice enough and made an effort to make me feel welcome. Though I will admit it's a bit hard to get close to the group of performed friends. But despite my slight alienation, it seemed that things were all going to work out. Well, all of us were on a similar budget plan, and by that I mean none of us really had much money to spend. Because of this, we were all on the same page while searching for the cheapest apartment we could find. After several days of searching, we stumbled across an ad for an ancient apartment located above the Campo Deep.
Oh, I actually think I did a history lesson on this. It's Campo di Fiori.
I'll let him keep saying that. That was their prime location, and we couldn't believe it that it was still available. No less listed for an unbelievably low price.
Okay, hang on. I would like to point something out that, number one, if it is cheaper than what it should be, because I've done a history lesson on the Campo di Fiori, that is an expensive hotel pretty much. And if it's listed at an unbelievably low price, that should put up 2 red flags. 1, it's haunted. Number 2, you might want to keep a flashlight next to your bed.
That was a prime location, and we couldn't believe it that it was still available. No less listed for an unbelievably low price. This immediately set alarm bells off in my head. The place was enormous, yet the rent was cheaper than the much smaller apartments in a far less described part of town. However, reason never really wins out in the group of excited young women. They had already made up their minds, and if I would be staying with them, this was my only option.
Okay, you can keep narrating. I need to go get a drink, because if I'm also going to narrate, I need something to drink.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to keep in mind. If you're going to do narrations, make sure to keep a glass of water, preferably, but any liquid drink will work.
So, how are you liking this so far, I wonder? Or whoever's watching. I'm telling you, it gets better. If I know Madame Macabre, she's always got something good up her sleeves. But this, I will instantly say, is the best. But by watching her videos on YouTube, you know she's going to be number 1 at a lot of things.
Yeah, because we can't pretend to match.
No, we cannot pretend to match that.
Because we're still starting out. Like, I had only recently started out on narrating Reddit posts on my channel, my vlog channel, Jägermeister Dreamer, and I definitely can't match r/. And if you don't know who r/ is, where have you been? He reads a lot of the funniest Reddit posts. Okay, you may continue.
But just understand this. If you watch Madame Macabre, let her tell you the story about when her and Shadow Kisses went out on a walk. Now that you've got to hear.
Is it the walk where they were in the woods and this tall figure was following them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I immediately was wanting to theorize on what that was. But
Alright, I'm going to go ahead and keep reading because this is getting better. We each received our own set of keys, as well as a map with walking directions. Because of its prime location, it really didn't take us long to get there. The campo was amazing. During the daytime, it was filled with the vibrant market. While during the event, it was lined with lively street performers. All of the apartments surrounding it looked to be ancient, so ours really didn't stand out all that much. After circling the square 3 or 4 times, we finally noticed the number was nailed to the front of a massive old wooden door. This would be our home for the next 3 months. I fought with my keys for a moment until there was an audible click of the heavy old lock. The thick old door swung forward with a screech. We were then met with a long, winding staircase. We all looked at one another and groaned. None of us had accounted for the fact that the building had been constructed before elevators were common. So 3 sets of stairs and countless complaints later, all 4 of us, with luggage in hand, stood outside our new front door. Once again, I reached for my set of keys and fought with a stubborn lock. As soon as the front door was open, there was a stampede of young women trying to claim the best rooms. Being a 3-bedroom apartment, it meant that 2 of us would have to share. I personally didn't really care, so I let the others battle it out. When dust had settled, I found that I would be sharing a room with a girl called Stephanie. That was fine with me. Stephanie was nice enough, and she was very quiet. My ideal feature in a roommate. Over the course of the rest of the day, we ran around exploring our new home. There were 2 bathrooms, a full kitchen, a living room with an ancient TV. Once again, I began to feel uneasy. Just how it was that we were able to get all of this for such a low price. But before I could finish the thought, I was interrupted by a fit of loud squealing. My initial reaction was to panic. However, soon I learned that all the noise was from the excitement. Down at the other end of the apartment near the front door, apparently there was another part of the flat we had missed. I followed the noise until it led me to a long, dark hallway. There at the end, behind the group of squealing women, was a washing and drying machine. For those of you thinking, what's the big deal? I should explain that these things were incredibly rare in Rome. Currently, exchange students have to wash their clothes by hand in the sink before hanging them up to dry. What was the luxury item like this doing in such a cheap apartment?
Again, there's the major red flag. It's haunted. Because that should, being cheap like this, that should already explain. Like we hear, it's a luxury. But if they're giving you all this for a extremely low price, that is mainly the first thing one would think. Pray continue.
Just as the screaming quilled it picked right back up again, as the girls noticed a door adjacent to the washing machine. Beyond the door was a master bathroom. It had a balcony, a clawfoot tub, and even a bidet.
I think that's how you say it.
The girls immediately started fighting over whose bathroom this was going to be. I didn't really see why we couldn't share, but apparently the others were dead set on having ownership. As it turned out, it ended up being my bathroom. Stephanie had made a logical argument that because she and I had to share a bedroom, while the other two each got their own, it was only fair that she and I got to share the master bath. And I'll admit that at first I was actually kind of excited. It was, after all, a really nice room. However, over the course of the next several weeks, I began to grow more and more weary of the room. I don't know how to put it into words. It's like every time I went to that room, I could feel something's eyes on me. And the voyeuristic element wasn't really what was watching me. It felt like whatever was watching element wasn't really what had me so unnerved. It felt like whatever was watching me was angry that it didn't want me there, and it wanted to hurt me. I began doing everything in my power to avoid the room. I asked Alicia if she would mind if I were to use her restroom occasionally. I made up a lame excuse about how I was far more convenient since her room was so close, while my bathroom was at the other end of the flat. At the end of the very long hallway. She happily agreed, though. When I told her that she could use my bathroom anytime she liked, this worked out well for a while. For about the first 2 months of my trip, I was able to completely avoid the eerie room. It wasn't until the final month that everything began to unravel. One night I was prepared to brush my teeth. I found that Alicia was already occupying her bathroom. I could hear giggles coming from down the hallway. It was clear both Stephanie and our other roommate were both getting ready for bed in the master bath. I decided that since there was strength in numbers, it would be all right just for tonight. So I made my way down the large bathroom where I joined the boisterous girls in brushing my teeth. They were in the midst of some conversation when Lindsay, our other roommate, had broken into such a furious fit of laughter that she had to lean on the wall for support. But suddenly she jolted upright as if she had been shocked. We all looked at what had been the cause of her reaction. There in the wall, about the same level as the bathtub, was a tiny door. None of us noticed it because it was the same color as the wall. The landlord had even painted over it. Naturally, this made me a bit nervous. Whatever it was, the landlord clearly didn't want anyone opening it. But as usual, throwing all caution to the wind, Lindsay reached for the handle and began tugging with all her might. Stephanie clicked her tongue in disapproval before pulling out a small pocket knife. She began delicately carving along the seam of the door. I wanted to beg her to stop, but I really didn't have the energy to argue that night. So within a few minutes, Lindsay yanked the little door open with a loud crack. It was a crawl space. It was fairly large. My guess would have been you could have fit at least 3 or 4 people in there. I was rather curious as to why the landlord would have sealed up an empty little room. While I thought about this, Stephanie and Lindsay began calling for Alicia to come see their new discovery. She was just as excited as they were when they first discovered it. Clever as could be accepted. This excitement waned over time, and eventually the crawl space was just turned into a storage for a few towels and laundry baskets. In the following days after the unsealing of the crawl space, things started to get from eerie to downright terrifying.
I'll be back.
Alright? But remember, this is Madame Macabre. She's not going to tell just any horror story. She also told stories of her life and all of that. But like I said, if you haven't seen Madame Macabre, look her up now. She is awesome, I have to say. You will love her work. And you can also subscribe to her channel. I'm fixing to do that once I start watching another one, which I might do tonight. But yeah, like me and my brother were telling you, Madame Macabre is actually really awesome. Her work is amazing. But I'm really happy. So, do you have any questions for me, my viewer? You can ask me a question. I mean, it's not going to hurt me or anything. Just wait on him, because I don't want to narrate this without him here. Because I know he would want to hear this. So, if you have any questions for me, viewer, I will be happy to answer. I mean, it's not like I'm going to be keeping anything away from you. I'm way too friendly for that. And here he is. Come on, Thomas. Thomas! In case you didn't know, Thomas is my cat. He's my 7-month-old kitty.
Yeah, I brought him in because he was disturbing the streams.
Okay.
But shall we continue?
Yes, we should. Alright, you remember where we left off, right?
Following days?
Nope, we got past that. Annoyingly, Alicia had changed her nightly routine so that I could no longer use her bathroom in the evenings. Once again, I was back in the large bathroom. All the while, the feeling that I was being watched growing worse and worse. I began to get so paranoid each time I went into that bathroom that I would literally jump at the slightest noise of pipes settling. As soon as I was finished, I would run at full speed down the hallway and close the door behind me. For some reason, I seem to be the only one feeling this way. It's not like I could have told the other girls either. I was already enough of an outcast as it was. So I just kept to myself and hoped it would go away eventually. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. One night I was getting ready for bed. I found myself alone in the bathroom. As I stood in front of the mirror brushing my teeth, something said, the hairs on the back of my neck straight up. There was a faint rustling noise, not the kind that could have been caused from my roommates. At the other end of the flat, any noise caused by them would have had to have been quite loud to reach me all the way at the end of the long hallway. No, this noise was very faint. The sound of someone gurgling, shuffling things around. I stood completely silent, terror filling me. The soft rustling noise was coming from inside the crawl space. I turned on my heels and ran down the hallway to grab the attention of my roommates. I tried to explain to them what happened, but all that came out of the were incoherent mummers. Eventually, I managed to stutter. Something's inside the crawl space.
Yep, and there it is.
Yep. Here's the picture. That's the crawl space.
Can't really see anything in there because of the glare, but
that's the crawl space.
Can't really see much because of the glare, but it's basically like a white area with a door.
Oh my god, that's eyes right there. Those are eyes.
Yeah, I see it. But basically, she caught something on a camera. Apparently, It was like a cheap throwaway camera, but she caught something on it. And if we could, we would put like a picture here on screen, but we don't really have the software available for that right now. Eventually, We'll see about getting some. But pray continue.
They looked at me with fear and confusion in their eyes. As a pack, we moved together down the hallway into the bathroom. I nearly fainted when I saw the tiny door hanging fully ajar. Through this discovery, filled me with horror. Alicia immediately pointed to the balcony side door. Stephanie had left it open to air out the bathroom after having taken a shower several hours ago. She peeked her head out the door and pointed to the slanted rooftop. Adjacent to ours, there was a pigeon's nest occupied by a few birds. The girl summarized that a pigeon must have flown this way in and was just because of the disturbance. They all had a laugh. They all had a good laugh as we made our way back to the living room. I pretended to shake it off, but I knew it was not a pigeon that caused the rustling noise. First off, the tiny door had been shut tight all day. None of us really cared to leave it open because it smelled quite musty inside. And secondly, the door had been shut when I left the bathroom. And I am certain of this. Yet there was a wide open when I returned. You're not going to tell me that a pigeon knows how to and is capable of opening and closing a door all by itself.
Nope, because they can only do so much with their talon feet.
And it was at this point I began to suspect that something was terribly wrong with this apartment. When I got back to my room and pulled out my laptop and called my best friends and via Skype, she had always been the skeptical and methodical type. However, she also kept an open mind toward things that were hard to explain. I decided that out of anyone, she was probably the best to talk about my situation. As I expected, she was initially quite doubtful, though she also agreed with me that a pigeon was quite likely not the source. She asked me if I had any photos of the crawl space. She said that if she could see it, that would help her to understand a little more clearly and possibly help her to come up with a more logical explanation. Now, do you have any questions, viewer? If you do, let us know. We'll be happy to answer. Relieved at her willingness to at least hear me out, I reached for my camera and made my way back down the eerie hallway. When I arrived, I found to my relief that the door was still closed. I stood in front of it for a moment, gathering my nerve before finally pulling the door open. Despite the clutter left inside by my roommates, it was empty. I snapped a quick photo before closing the door once more, and running back to my bedroom, I immediately plugged my camera to my computer and uploaded the photo. When I finally opened the image, I was petrified by what I saw. There, in the upper right hand corner, was a face baring its teeth at me. My whole body began violently shaking.
Uh-huh. See, I figured it was. I figured there was something there. Because, yeah, you can definitely see a face there.
Yeah, and yep, there's the teeth right there. All right. Dear God, that thing is in our home, I muttered to myself. Fear began to overtake me. Someone has sealed whatever it was inside of that crawl space, and we had let it out. I was so absorbed in my panic I didn't even notice when my roommate returned. She was blissfully unaware of the imminent danger we are in. Yet even Yet even if I tried to warn her, she would not believe me. I was at a loss of what to do, and finally decided that I would deal with it in the morning. Though not by a large amount, I did feel braver in the sunlight. From there, I attempted to get some sleep. Though for the first time ever since being there, I closed and bolted my door for getting into bed. Stephanie eyed me suspiciously while doing so, but I just told her jokingly that Lindsay had been sneaking into our room the previous nights and had been stealing my Nutella. She laughed heartily, shaking her head before settling down for the night. I will admit, the only reason I was able to find any sleep that night was because of her presence. Something about not being alone give one a sense of false security. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the sound woke me. I had always been a light sleeper. To the faint noise was enough to stir me. It sounded like a door being pushed open at the other end of the flat, only by footsteps. But these weren't just normal footsteps. They were far too fast. It sounded like someone was running at full speed from the foyer to the living room and all about the apartment. But these weren't heavy footsteps like the kind you would expect from a running person. They were very light, almost unnaturally so. My initial reaction was to assume it was either Alicia or Lindsay. So I got up, stuck my ear to the wall behind me. That separated Lindsay's room from mine. I could hear her faint but steady breathing. She was clearly asleep. It wasn't her. Then I crossed over to the other side of my room, and the door once again stuck my ear to the wall. Alicia's snoring was quite audible. There was no way it was her. I slowly began to grow fearful as I turned in a last resort to see if Stephanie had perhaps gotten up, but I could plainly see her resting form silently rising up and down. A shiver went down my spine, and I nearly screamed when I realized that the footsteps had come to a stop of my door. Despite all the lights being out, I could clearly see the looming dark shadow of a form through the tiny crack. at the foot of my door. I dared not to move. Whatever it was just standing there waiting. Then, to my horror, my doorknob slowly began to jiggle, gently at first, then growing violent. A realization of it being locked, the noise of it eventually woke my roommate. She sat up, blinking in the confusion. That instant, the jiggling of the doorknob stopped. She asked me just what the hell was I doing? And if I knew at the time it was, I told her it wasn't me. I told her that whatever had opened the door to the crawl space the previous day had come back. But she just furrowed her brow at me and said that I needed to get more sleep. The next day, I made an appointment with my program supervisor. I told him that I needed to go home. He tried to tell me that I was just homesick and that it would pass. But I hesitated. But I insisted. He eventually gave up and let me call my parents. They were confused but understanding. They were able to change the date of my return flight to the following morning. I really wanted to get out of there that day, but understandably, that was the soonest they could manage. Unfortunately, this meant I would have to stay one more night in the apartment.
You can only imagine how that's going to work out.
When I returned, I tried to tell the others about what had been going on. I knew I was going to be getting out of there and would be out of danger, but I was still immensely worried for their safety. But none of them took me seriously. They looked at me as if I was a mad woman. They didn't say anything, but I was sure they all thought I was going home because of some sort of mental breakdown.
Yep, they definitely all don't believe until last minute. And that's not just going by these people, that's going by anyone who has someone in their place experiencing a haunting. They don't believe it until they see it.
And that's pretty sure it was going to happen at the end of the story. At that point, there was nothing I could say.
Don't spoil it.
That would convince them. So that night, I locked my door and hesitantly went to bed. And right on cue, once again, around 2 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken by the rapid footsteps scampering around the apartment. I could hear the door to the bathroom begin to creak open, followed by the door at the end of the hallway. The footsteps grew louder and faster as they moved through the apartment. And finally, once more, they came to a pause outside of my door. I could hear breathing this time, slowly and heavy. I sat up in panic, and to my horror, I saw that Stephanie had forgotten to lock the door behind her after getting up to use the restroom.
Uh-oh.
It was outside my door, and I could not know if I had time to jump up and try to lock it before the thing realized there was nothing blocking its way. I hesitated a moment too long, and by the time I had sat up straight in my bed, the handle slowly began to turn. I froze in terror as the door cracked open, revealing my tormentor. It stood there, ominously, in the doorway, staring me down. Its eyes protrude slightly from its skull, had a gave off a very faint bluish light. It had appeared to have a nose, only slits.
It didn't appear to have a nose.
It didn't appear to have a nose, only slits where the nostrils should have been. It had the teeth of a man, but no lips, giving it the impression of eternally toothy snarl. Its grayish white skin was waxy and stretched tight over its bony face. The rest of its skeletal form was hard to make out, as it was almost entirely enveloped in shadows. Enveloped in shadows. After pausing for a moment in the doorway, it began to head toward me. As it moved, its body let out sickening cracks. I sat there, still petrified by fear, until it made its way to the foot of my bed. Its heavy breaths were definitely loud. I didn't know how Stephanie slept through it. The air had begun to smell sour and stagnant. With frightening speed, it jolted to the other end of the bed. Mere feet from me, I gagged at the smell of it, like sulfur and rotting flesh. Slowly unfurled one of its long and gnarly hands and proceeded to reach for me. Not until it was several inches away did I finally find my voice. I screamed as loud as possible, as I possibly could, and it halted in its tracks. Stephanie shot up from her bed, visibly frightened. The creature hunched over on all fours and fled the room with unsettling movements, and recalled those of the spider. A moment later, Stephanie switched the light on and looked at me ferociously. Furiously. She demanded to know what the fuss was all about. I told her exactly what happened, but she just called me a nutcase.
See, there's the non-believing until too late kind of thing going on.
The taxi came to pick me up very early the next morning. The sun had not even risen by the time it arrived. None of the girls came to see me off, but I expected this. After loading my luggage into the trunk, I climbed into the back seat of the old cab. It had driven right through the square, and it was sitting at the base of my apartment. When I leaned to look out the window, I could see where my room had been, my face contorted into the mixture of panic and concern. There, looking out my old window, was the creature. Its blinking eyes bore into me. Its unblinking eyes bore into me, and its lipless mouth curled into a snarling grin. Before I could say anything, the cab driver had taken off, leaving that hell house far behind. I tried to warn them. I really did. I did everything in my power to try to warn them of the danger that they were in, but none of them listened to me. There was no way I could have stopped what happened after I returned home. You see, several weeks after returning to the United States, I received a phone call from the program director. He informed me that the day before the program ended, all three of my past roommates had been reported missing.
Mm-hmm.
The authorities had no idea just how long they had actually been gone for, as they were only recently discovered to be missing when the program director went to check on them. After none of them made it to the end of the program wrap-up meeting, they assumed it all been at least a week or two since all the food in the apartment was expired. There was no sign of forced entry, and no valuables were missing. The only notable detail mentioned in the report was that when they arrived to the scene, there was a storage little door hanging ajar in their bathroom. A strange little door hanging ajar in the bathroom. When they all approached it, they were met with a powerful odor becoming from visible source. The official report as them declared as missing, but I know they're all dead. I know that I'm incredibly lucky to have made it without it with my life. I think the only reason I'm still alive today is because I fled thousands of miles across the ocean despite the unwillingness to listen. Despite their unwillingness to listen, I still feel unimaginable amount of guilt over what happened to those girls. That's why I'm writing this now. I may not be able to go back in time to save them, but maybe I can prevent this from happening to you. Please, please heed my warning. If you ever get the opportunity to study abroad, this keep keep this in mind. If it seems too good to be true, it possibly is. And whatever you do, don't stay on the third floor of the ancient yellow house apartment complex above the Fiore.
Campo di Fiori.
There's something there, something evil.
Yeah, and well, I don't listen very well. Just a little detail about me. If I ever go to Rome, I'm gonna stay on that floor. I don't I don't mind a little demonic entity in my room. I'm pretty sure I know how to deal with it.
There you go.
Alright, my phone is dying, so we can't do anything off of here anymore. But I can at least ask this. What did y'all think of that story? Like, you can, even if it's after the stream, y'all can leave it in the comment section below what you thought of that story. We're going to use Cat Dragon Lady's phone now.
Since mine is actually hooked up to the computer.
And I'm going to hook mine up to mine since it's out here.
So please, viewer, go ahead and ask us your question for that story. Just have in mind that is Madame Macabre, the crawl space. And she has proof today on